Okay, we are in Unit 2, which is the Introduction to Ecology, and we're working on two objectives. First of all, to diagram the flow of energy and nutrition through an ecosystem, and hopefully you are very good at this now, and you've made a food web of a particular ecosystem and included all the trophic levels and identifications in that project. Now we're working on analyzing the function of nutrients in living things, and we're focusing on the organic compounds, or the things that contain carbon or contain in living things. And that would be carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and then finally nucleic acids. So this is our focus, if that will, there we go. So we're working on the second objective in this lecture. Okay, so first of all, to start with, just as an overview of the function of nutrients in living things. So we call these things organic compounds, and all organic compounds contain carbon. That's what makes them organic. The only exception to that might be carbon dioxide. Some people would consider it organic because it has carbon, other people would not because it doesn't have hydrogen as well. But we're not going to worry about that. And we're going to just look at the organic compounds, and they contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and some of them contain nitrogen. And these molecules are actually very, very large molecules, and those molecules are made up of small units that are repeated over and over and over again, and we call those monomers. So we can take that large molecule that's very difficult to interpret and realize that it's actually composed of these repeated smaller units. So like bricks that make up a house or something. And so we call the units monomers, or 1-mers, and we call the linked together molecule a polymer. You were introduced to polymers last year in Earth Science. So the polymers are actually the organic compounds. These are those large molecules, the carbohydrates, the lipids, the proteins, and the nucleic acids. You're also going to need to know the monomer of each of those. So as we go through them, pay attention to that, and we'll be filling out a chart at the end. So this is just a little diagram. If these were the little small units, and we would call those the monomers, and they're all pretty much the same, and then we link them together in a very long chain, and that would be the polymer. All right. Okay. So the first organic compound is carbohydrates. So carbon, hydrate, hydra is hydrogen, and actually this little 8s you'll learn next year in chemistry means that it has oxygen as well. So these have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And the carbohydrates are really your source of energy for your body. You take in larger molecules, you break them down into the smaller molecules, and those smaller molecules are called sugars. And those you can very quickly turn into a special molecule that's used in your body directly for energy, which is ATP. So in your body, you can take in sugars, but you can't use them directly for energy. It's like having a savings account, and the glucose and the sugars in your body are in like a passport savings account where you have to have like a book that you go to the bank. And ATP would be like cash currency. So if you go to the store and you want to buy a soda, you can use cash. In our bodies, we're using ATP. You would not be able to use your passport savings account and show them the booklet and show that you will have energy. That's like stored energy, which is what the sugars or the glucose would be in your body. So you have to take those sugars and convert them into something that's usable by your body, and that molecule is ATP. And so here's a little picture of that. So here's our ATP. ATP stands for adenosine, which is this little thing right here, tri-3-phosphate. So we have 3 phosphates. So what your body is able to do is remove one of those phosphates. And when it removes the phosphate, there's energy that's then available for your body to do something. So this little burst is energy. And so now you're left with adenosine di, or 2-phosphate. Now, your body has to then turn that back into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, so you can do more work and get more energy. So what's happening is the food that you're eating is being used to put a phosphate on this molecule to convert it back into a adenosine triphosphate. And then your body's able to use that directly for energy. And we're going to be looking at ATP throughout the year. So anytime you hear the term ATP, just think energy for your body. Okay, the next group of organic compounds are the proteins. And these are actually, if you take away water, these are the most abundant molecule in your body. Water's not organic, so they really are the most abundant organic molecule, the most common. If you take away everything, you're mostly proteins. Okay, I told you you're going to have to know the monomers and the polymers. So the monomer, or the building blocks that make up a protein, are the amino acids. And all amino acids contain nitrogen. So you first of all need to have the nitrogen available if you need to make amino acids, but you also have to get rid of the nitrogen waste when you break down amino acids. So this nitrogen is going to come into play later in the year. And the polymers are the polypeptides. So a peptide is like a protein, polys, many of them stuck all together. So we have a bunch of amino acids linked together in that chain that you saw earlier, and that forms a polypeptide. Proteins are obviously, because they're the most abundant, are also the most important in your body, and they have structural properties as well as functional properties. So in other words, they make up parts of your body, and they also are involved in how your body functions. And one of the most important functional ones are enzymes. And we're going to spend some time talking about enzymes. We have a lab that we'll be doing on enzymes, and the next slide talks about them in more detail. So in your body, the amino acids are the monomers of the proteins, and you have 20 of them. So all of the proteins in your body consist of these 20 amino acids. Different amino acids in different arrangements in the chain, and that's going to make it so that their function is different. And this little diagram shows you the 8 essential amino acids. So out of the 20, there are 8 that your body cannot manufacture. You have to take these in the form of food. So you have to eat these. And what this diagram actually indicates to you is that if you eat just corn, you would only get these essential amino acids. So if you're a vegetarian and you are not mixing your vegetables, you may only be getting a small portion of the amino acids that your body needs. Beans actually provide these. And so why a lot of dishes combine beans and corn is because the combination of those provides you with all the amino acids that your body cannot produce on its own. Okay, we're going to look at proteins. We're going to look at enzymes for just a second. So enzymes are considered biological catalysts, or they catalyze chemical reactions, or they cause chemical reactions to occur. And in order for that to happen, the shape of the protein is really important. The protein has to have the right shape in order to function properly. Here's some vocab terms. We call the molecule that's involved in the chemical reaction substrate. So for example, here we have sucrose, which is like table sugar. And this is actually a glucose molecule and a fructose molecule linked together. Your body can't digest this. So what it needs to do is break the bond and separate these two. And then you can actually absorb this molecule and this molecule and use it in your body. But linked together, you cannot. So you have an enzyme, and that enzyme is going to break down the substrate, and the substrate being the sucrose. So the enzyme has to have a specific spot in this molecule that fits just right, like a lock and a key in a way, or a handshake in a way. So the enzyme comes along, and I think of it as like it hugs the substrate. So it wraps around the substrate and makes it so this chemical reaction can occur. The chemical reaction could be putting things together, it could be breaking things down. In this case, we're breaking things down, and we actually need to have some water to make that happen. So the molecule gets broken down, and now we have a glucose and we have a fructose, and our body can use these for energy and convert them into ATP, or make parts of the body that we need, or convert them into other classes of organic molecules. Like if you have too much of this and you don't use it, you can convert it into fats for long-term storage. That's not good. And now you're left with this active site, and another substrate molecule can come in. And these enzymes they're like workhorses. They just keep breaking down substrate. They don't get broken down in the process. They don't get used up. They're reusable. Okay. The next class of organic molecules are the lipids. And the lipids are made up of fatty acids, and these fatty acids are long chains of carbon with hydrogen linked to all the carbons. And while our carbohydrates are our usable energy that we convert directly into ATP, our lipids are more of a long-term energy storage. So when you don't use up all the energy that your body has available to it, it takes it and puts it into long-term storage in the form of lipids or fat. We also use this for insulation. So everybody, no matter how healthy you are, has a layer of fat on your heart. And that is just to insulate your heart, to protect that organ, because it's kind of important. You also have hormones that are lipids, like testosterone, estrogen, cholesterol. These are molecules that communicate from one place in the body to another, and they consist of lipids. The other area that we find lipids in our body are in the cell membranes. So one of the things about lipids is that they're not soluble in water. They won't break down in water. So it makes sense that they would be part of the cell membrane, because that's a barrier between the cell and the environment, and if that was water soluble, most of the environment's water, and it would just dissolve, and that wouldn't be good. So the cell membrane is made up of these lipids. And the other thing that we use these lipids for, since they are insoluble in water, is a water repellent. So they're found in your skin. If you put water on your skin, it'll bead up. That's because it's water repellent. Feathers, fur will have these water repellent. And they also helps to prevent you from drying out. So if it doesn't allow the water to transfer through it, then you retain your water so you don't dry out, which is desiccation. And the last group of organic molecules are the nucleic acids, and those consist of deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, and ribonucleic acid, or RNA. And we're going to spend a whole unit studying these guys, so I'm not going to focus on them right now. And the monomer here, and I guess it's not on my slide, is a nucleotide. You might need to put that in your chart. You can ask me and I'll help you with that. I think that's it. So here's your summary. So this is just a little chart of the 4 classes of organic molecules, what their monomers are, what they're made up of, and what they do in your body. So here's our polymers, here are our monomers, and here's our function in our body. And these are just some examples of some of the main things that they do for our bodies. And that is analyzing the function of nutrients in living things, including carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So hopefully now you could tell me the monomers that make up these polymers, where you find them, what kinds of foods you might find them in, and what they do for you in your body. And that is it.